I've worked in the computer field for 48 years with companies like Intel, Cray Research, and Lockheed Martin. And in those efforts, I've been a project lead on a lot of projects, some that you would know, some that you wouldn't. For example, the Orion project that was targeted to replace the space shuttle, I was the original flight software lead. So anyway, on that, when I saw the first videos coming out after the election, I was in Pahrump, Nevada, actually shooting holes in paper. But in the evening, I went to the hotel and I saw some videos by Shiva Ayyadurai and Edward Solomon. I hadn't seen Dr. Franks yet, but I saw very competent mathematicians coming up with what looked like credible evidence of voting fraud. And quite honestly, I had never even thought about voting systems because I was busy having fun building things that shoot pictures down from Mars. So I decided, well, I could go and look at the same math that they're looking at, but why? So I took a little different approach. I went and said, okay, I'm a computer guy and I know how to build systems. How were these systems built? In other words, what was the engineering that went into it? And so with that, I looked at it, and the first thing you have to do is understand what the problem is that you're trying to solve. Well, I think we can all agree that there's nothing more prime target, militarily, internationally, whatever goal you want to talk about, than the United States elections. We're the superpower, or have been to this point, in the whole world. There's nothing that is a juicier target. And I'd like to point out that it's well understood within military. I have to say I'm a former Air Force officer as well as Sean. It's pretty well understood that even a fortified position cannot be defended if you're outnumbered more than 6-1. And this where Dr. Frank and Dr. Eastwood's point about 80 million of us is really important. We need to understand we're the majority. And we have two problems to confront: courage and honesty. And we've been letting them get away with cowing us. Along that line, the voting systems, and I know Sean, I'm kind of winging this, I know Sean has a graph that shows you the link of the voting, the way it goes from you to the actual final tabulation. I don't know if you can pull that up real easily, and I don't know if you can see it. But the bottom line is, a voting system is like a chain. And what do we know about a chain? It's no stronger than a weakest link. And so one of the things that's been shined a light upon as a weak link that I'm going to talk about in particular is just the electronic voting machines and the software associated with them. And with that, I'm going to ignore one key piece that I think is a really big exposure, because I think Sean will get into it when he talks about thumb drives. But the update process with these machines is an enormous hole. They're not controlled. They have what they call a trusted build. And when I looked at what goes into making a trusted build, I was not pleased. In particular, there is a rule, I'm not sure what it is, something like less than 10 lines of code gets put in as de minimis, and they don't have to go through a revalidation cycle. I can't tell you how many hours I have spent throughout my career looking for that one bit that was causing the problem. So anybody who thinks that you can have integrity with any system that you allow 10 lines of code to go through without being revalidated is absolutely nuts. Okay, then we get into the configuration on these machines. I don't know what, and Sean would probably have a better grasp than I would on this. I don't know how old the machines that we're talking about, but they're off-the-shelf machines. I suspect in poorer precincts and whatever, they probably got shorted and have older systems. But the newer systems are made by what's called a SoC, a system on a chip. And the Wi-Fi is built into it, and it's on by default. You have to know how to turn it off. This is one of the reasons that Texas rejected Dominion. Okay, so along that line, are voting systems on the net? Yes. We've got many proof cases with what's called war driving. Jovan Prulitzer in particular had done it in Georgia. I'm not sure where else he's done it, but many people have done it. That is an incredible myth and an outright lie. The next thing that I'd like to point out, when it comes to voting systems, it's been stated pretty clearly by the two doctors that were up here that we have to get rid of voting machines. That is 100% true just on the basis of being a technologist. You have a choice. You can have security or you can have anonymity on the net. And that's actually true because this chain of voting that we're talking about, when they say you're not on the net, what portion of it are you talking about? For example, in 2000 and I think it was the 2004 election, a gentleman named Stephen Spoonemore was the CEO of a credit card company that handled credit card security. Now, how many people in this room have not had your credit card hacked? Anybody? Really? Do you ever use it? Yeah. And this is to the point. Spoonemore is on a YouTube video where he's saying that at, I think it's 38 minutes and 30 seconds into the tube, he says, you have your choice. You can have security or you can have anonymity. The only reason that you can comfortably use your credit card today is because of people like Spoonemore and his company. What they do is they know who you are, they know where you live, they know your habits. And so when they get something that's off the beaten path, like I go to Las Vegas, I've gotten a call within 30 seconds after I use my credit card on a parking meter that I got hacked. And the reason was, I live in Colorado, that was in Las Vegas. But I've had other things, same kind of scenario. I've probably been hacked about a dozen times. With your vote, do they know who you are? Do they know that your ballot's associated with you? Without that association, there is absolutely no way that you can detect fraud in reality. You can't get down to that level. Now, the wonderful math that Dr. Franks is doing is showing you what happened, but he's drilling down in some other ways where he's going outside of the math to go and figure out what happened. And he's doing a brilliant job of deduction to figure out how to do that. So then, my main goal was to look at the engineering that these systems were built with. And in general, just to cut to the chase, there's commercial level engineering, and then there's what I'm going to call mission critical level engineering. And I've worked in both fields. Commercial is like Oracle and Microsoft go compete in the world, and the thing there is they're competing on features and price. They're not competing on reliability per se. They have support groups that'll come in and clean up the doo-doo after the fact. Okay. Mission critical, on the other hand, if it fails, somebody dies. Okay. And when you get to it, okay, like I mentioned, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, that is one level of mission critical engineering that takes place, and I won't bore you with the details, but there are standards on that that are pretty rigid. And you really do an awful lot of testing with that. But then, like I said, on the Orion project now, you're talking human flight. Think 787, because that was actually the base that we used to build the Orion system with. That is a whole new standard. And it takes software, regular software primitives that are normally used in building systems, and it rules them out because they're risky. So now if you look at that, okay, MRO endangered tens of people on the launch pad, and that was it. After that, it was just space junk if it screwed up. Orion, or a 787 takeoff, can kill hundreds of people. Now ask yourself about a US election. How many people get affected by a presidential election in the US? Last time I checked, it was somewhere around 330 million. Okay. The level of engineering that has been done on our voting systems isn't even up to the par of what Oracle or Microsoft would do. Not even close. And even worse is the certification process, which is a joke. You have the EAC that sanctions these VSTLs, And
Voting system testing laboratories.
yeah, I'm sorry. And the thing is, the requirements document per se is a thing called the VVSG, the Volunteer Voting System Guidelines. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean, you know that a guideline is not a requirement. And this is a little game they play, actually. And the reason it's voluntary is actually a constitutional issue. It's actually proper, because the Constitution does not allow, despite what H.R. 1's threatening to do, does not allow the national government to come in and dictate voting procedures to the states. Now, they can do it for congressional elections, but they can't do it for internal state elections nor the presidential election. That is unconstitutional. Now, will it get ruled that way? Who knows? Anyway,
Ash is giving me the speed up sign, and I haven't been telling Dennis because I like listening to Dennis. I like listening to Dennis better than I like speaking. So
yeah, well, just real quickly.
No, you do yours. I'll cut mine.
No, that's okay. There have been certifications that have been done in direct conflict with what the VVSG specifies, and they're known, documented in reviews, and they got certified anyway, so we're living with them.
So weak as those standards are, we're not even meeting that.
We're not even meeting those standards. So we can go into Dominion specific, but you know, at a higher level, I've pretty much covered what matters.
I would say, so Dennis's last point, it's questionable whether the systems that have been identified are ever fixed after the systems are certified. I've looked at the testing documents. I would say no. There's no evidence that they even consider the vulnerabilities identified in other states. So some states still have examiners. Texas has examiners. Pennsylvania had examiners. California contracted out to a couple different companies that did, I wouldn't put them at the nation state level threat capability, but they did more serious examination, and every time they identify serious vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Anything else from that you want to?
No, the only other thing is there is a strict definition difference. With commercial, there's, on any problem, there's severity and probability. And in a commercial world, it's okay to multiply those together and give probability and odds, so if it's not likely to happen. But mission critical, you just can't have it.
That's right.
And one of the things that was done that got the certifications passed is they applied the commercial technique.
So in other words, severity did not drive what it should have.
Yes.
A rejection of certification.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because the probability was so low.
So I'm going to talk about some of the specifics that Dennis is hinting at very quickly. Okay, so I've started digging into the systems and looking up the vulnerabilities, the published known vulnerabilities associated with the systems that we have. So what you're looking at here in this table, this starts off with the Democracy Suite 5.11 election management system, lists hardware and software components. So you can see Microsoft's Windows Server 2016 is a software component, so there's an S. There are 19 known vulnerabilities published for it. I have no indication that any of those have been addressed in our systems. So if you see red, then you know there's a known vulnerability. If you see yellow, it's because it's proprietary. We don't have any insight into it. Nobody has done the work or exposed what the truth is about how vulnerable those software and hardware components are. Okay, so I'm just going to flip through these so you can see them. I'll tell you what you're looking at. So that's election management system and another page of election management system. 17 known vulnerabilities for the PowerEdge R630 server, 36 plus for the Precision T3420 client server. These are vulnerabilities. These are things that aren't supposed to be in there. Wait till I get to the things that were supposed to be in there. And if it's blue, it means I just didn't even have time to look it up. It's like the Cepstral Voices is for voice-assistive technology. I didn't even have time to look it up. Still in the election, we're still looking at vulnerabilities for the election. Just one of the, thousands of systems that we have in our election systems. And then you get into ImageCast Central, which uses the Dell Optiplex 9030s and 3050s. There are known vulnerabilities for that hardware. For the 7440s, there are known vulnerabilities for the hardware. For the 7050, there are known vulnerabilities. I haven't got to scanners yet. I'll get to those sometime this next week. For the HiPro scanner, for sure, there are known vulnerabilities for those commercial scanners. We're still on ImageCast Central. Again, you have proprietary systems. Microsoft Windows 10, 1100 plus known vulnerabilities. The Kofax scanning software. So we don't use Canon's scanning software on the Dominion systems. We use Kofax scanning. Kofax scanning It uses ActiveX, an older version of ActiveX. It's vulnerable. Microsoft Visual C++ uses the Wix tool set for builds. It's vulnerable. This just goes on and on. I'm not trying to scare you, but if it doesn't stand the hair up on the back of your neck, you're just not paying attention. ImageCast voter activation, I'll talk about that later. That's a special case. Okay, so here's an example. Now you can look at the Secretary of State's site. And I've got the link in the slides. You can look up the systems that the Secretary of State has certified. They have the serial numbers. With the serial number, you can go to Dell's support site and you can look up those machines and see their configuration and their status. The warranty's expired on all of our systems, so they're not even in product support anymore with Dell. This system, the Dell 3420, the EMS server, was built with a Wi-Fi driver in it. It has an outstanding urgent warning, Gesundheit, an outstanding urgent warning that a malicious user with low privileges could exploit a vulnerability to give root access. That means everything. That means everything on the system. The motherboard for the system has a Thunderbolt driver and controller built into it. That's exploited completely. Physical access to the Thunderbolt port on this motherboard means the system is never secure again. Light it on fire, it's done. And I could go through the rest of these. I want to talk about the pictures there. The picture in the right-hand side, the small picture, is an RF modem that is built into every single one of the Dominion ImageCast voter activation laptops that we use in our state. They have a built-in modem. It's a Wi-Fi and 4G modem. And then the bottom image there is a memory card, a DIMM card from actually this machine. That's what the memory card looks like on the Dell Precision T3420 that's used in the election management servers for all the Dominion systems. Now, in this one, there's something different about it, and I just want to see if anybody recognizes what's different about that card. If anybody can tell, just raise your hand if you can see what's different about the card. And that's how it would feel if you were election staff in a county and opened up the box to look at the memory card. You probably wouldn't notice that there is an RF modem on a chip installed on that memory card, and it could be. You'd never see it. It just blends right in. These are other threat and vulnerability indicators, and I won't go through all of them. Dennis talked about Mr. Spoonman, the Stuxnet virus that was spread via USB sticks. That's exactly how, that's our air gap in between our voting systems is USB sticks, and yet that's how the Stuxnet virus was spread with an exploited 0-day. And they used a spoofed driver cert. So in other words, when Dominion or our county or our state staff say, oh yeah, this is the software that's supposed to be installed on this machine, and we can tell because here's the driver certification, that's exactly how Stuxnet worked. That's how Iranian centrifuges were taken down at Natanz. And I do want to talk, and you can read the rest of these. I want to mention that the U.S. Department of Defense Joint Staff Unclassified Network was hacked in 2015 by the Advanced Persistent Threat 29 team. It took them 2 weeks to fix that. It's not fixed. But that's what they announced. It took 2 weeks to fix it. And then 2018, October, Amazon and Apple discovered that their servers had been attacked in a supply chain attack that installed a chip. That's to scale, that chip that you're looking at there. That's the tip of a number 2 pencil. That's what that chip looks like. It was disguised as a power coupler, but it's not a power coupler. It's actually an RF modem. And they were getting data exfiltrated from their server stacks at Amazon and Apple. They're pretty serious about their security, and yet it still happened to them. We don't even have supply chain security.
Right.
Okay, and I'll let other people look up the issues there, but we've got the links in the file. Now on this chart, you're seeing the same graphic. Now in the background, can you see that chip that's kind of hidden behind the text? That's the RF chip that was found inside the ES&S voting systems that were opened up in Michigan. That's the chip to scale. And it wasn't even hidden. It was just installed in the machine. All they had to do was crack the case open. We don't crack our cases open. Nobody in the state has opened up the cases of our machines to see what's installed in them, neither hidden nor overt. And also there's something else different on the image. Can anybody tell what it's kind of a trick question. So on that same image of the chip above the pencil, I've got a QR code that's superimposed on there. It's tiny, tiny. You have to blow it up to see it. You have to scan it at a higher resolution. When you look up that QR code, it returns the value fraud. And I would just want to suggest, if that QR code at that size was somewhere on your ballot, you would have no idea. And the reason I'm telling you that is because that's one of the ways that the RLA randomization could be bypassed, by having codes on ballots that you don't want included in the RLA sampling, and by having the code that we already saw, the coders were talking about how to hide specific CVRs from the client. That's just one of many ways. We could talk about color dropouts anytime anybody wants to talk about it. They also found in 2020 35 voting systems that were online. They connected to them through the public internet. DOD was hacked at a massive scale by the software that was supposed to protect their systems. That was a monitoring system. That was a SolarWinds hack. In 2 years, from 18 to 20, there were over 100 billion credential attacks. This is what's reported by retailers. That's where they do an account takeover. Now, somebody wants to suggest we should do mobile voting by the phone. You're not in control of your phone. Nobody's in control of their phone. Okay, so in summary, nobody who knows anything about the threat or about computer systems should or does trust our voting systems or any electronic voting systems. The states do not have the resources to secure them. The Department of Defense, with a $9.5 billion budget and thousands of cyber people, gets its joint staff network hacked. Does somebody really think we can protect our election systems in the state with day staff when it's the most lucrative target in the world? It can't be done. That's right. It can't be done. This chart, I'm proud of this, I'm just going to mention it. This chart shows, so I could vote with that certificate that you can see there. You'll see it on the charts when you blow it. That's a certificate of Indian blood. It's a legal ID for voting in the state of Colorado. This particular one says that Jenna Griswold is 100% Aleutian Indian. I don't know if she knows that, but I could vote as her with that. And then down at the bottom is a utility bill with her name on it. I could vote as her with that too. So we've seen, and we didn't even get to the indications and warning that we're seeing in Colorado. You can see the charts online. I recommend you do. We're seeing patterns in unaffiliated voting in the GOP-dominant counties that show perfect curve fitting with the Republican votes that are being cast. We're seeing patterns, and we don't see it in the Democrat-strong counties. We're seeing patterns in voter registration where unaffiliated voters are just skyrocketing. In fact, population growth in 2018 to 2020 in Colorado was only about 110,000 people, but we had growth in voter registration of 471,000. There's no way. There's no way. So we have to investigate this Potemkin village if we want to know what's true. And we'll find it. We'll find it if we do it right. We just have to do it. We have to demand it. And we need legislators to stand with us. And we need to stand by them when they support it. And we need to make it clear for the ones who don't support it that they don't have our support.